Close your eyes and imagine a monitor flatlining in a sterile hospital room. You assume that when the rhythm stops, your mind instantly turns off like a light bulb pulled from its socket. It doesn't. The answer changes everything we think about the end of human consciousness. Before we go any deeper into the anatomy of our final moments, I want to ask you something. Do you believe our consciousness survives the body, or is it just a biological illusion? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start with a foundational fact that medicine ignored for centuries. Clinical death is not a cliff, it is a slow, agonizing slide down a muddy hill. For 300,000 years, every human who ever lived has crossed this threshold under the assumption that the darkness is immediate. But modern neuroscience is revealing that the brain does something completely counterintuitive when the heart quits beating. It does not just shut down. It throws a massive, brilliant, terrifying party. In 2022, a neurosurgeon named Dr. Ajmal Zemar was treating an 87-year-old epileptic patient in an operating room. The patient was hooked up to a continuous electroencephalogram, a machine recording every tiny electrical ripple in his cortex. Suddenly, the patient suffered a massive heart attack and died right there on the table. For the first time in medical history, scientists accidentally recorded the exact electrical activity of a human brain as it slipped from life into death. What they found shattered decades of clinical assumptions. For about 15 seconds before and 30 seconds after the heart stopped pumping blood, the monitor did not show a dying organ slowing to a halt. It showed an explosion of high-frequency electrical activity called gamma oscillations. Think about this. Gamma waves are the most advanced, highly coordinated rhythms the human brain can produce. They are the exact frequencies your brain relies on when you are performing high-level cognitive tasks, synthesizing complex ideas, dreaming vivid dreams, or diving deep into your oldest, most treasured memories. It wasn't just a dying gasp, it was a highly organized symphony. Look at this from three distinct angles. First, look at the pure neurobiological mechanics. When blood stops flowing, the brain is instantly starved of oxygen and glucose. The molecular pumps that keep electrical charges stable across your brain cells begin to fail. You would expect this failure to cause immediate chaotic static. Instead, the sudden drop in inhibition allows the remaining neural networks to fire in a hypersynchronized burst. It is as if all the filters are stripped away at once, leaving the raw machinery of the mind to run at maximum velocity. Second, consider the subjective psychological reality of the person inside that skull. If the brain is swimming in gamma waves, the experience isn't one of fading into an empty void. It is a state of hyper-awareness. This explains why survivors of near-death experiences frequently report their life flashing before their eyes in chronological perfection. The brain is literally combing through its own archives, playing back the tape at a speed and clarity that is impossible during normal, waking life. Your entire existence is compressed into a final, vivid film strip. Third, look at the evolutionary paradox. Why would a brain facing imminent destruction waste its final precious reserves of energy on a massive electrical light show? Evolution is notoriously stingy. It does not build complex, highly coordinated physiological protocols for no reason. Some researchers hypothesize that this surge is an accidental byproduct of a desperate, last-ditch survival mechanism. The brain is pulling every lever, releasing every stored neurochemical in a frantic attempt to kickstart the heart and keep the organism alive. It is a biological battle fought in the dark. The same thing that happened to that patient is going to happen to you one day. And we don't even know it until we are right on the edge. Let's move deeper into the timeline, into the second minute of the shutdown. This is where things get even stranger. In 2013, a neuroscientist named Dr. Jimo Borjigin at the University of Michigan conducted a study on the neural dynamics of cardiac arrest. She placed electrodes on the brains of rats and then induced clinical death. What she discovered echoed the human data, but added a deeper, more troubling layer of understanding. Within 30 seconds after clinical death, the rats showed a massive generalized surge in brain activity that exceeded the levels seen when they were completely awake and conscious. The levels of neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine skyrocketed. Serotonin, the chemical responsible for mood and visual perception, increased by several 100%. The brain was literally drowning in its own pharmacy. Let's break this down from three different perspectives. From the physiological standpoint, this neurochemical flood is a catastrophic system failure. The neurons are dumping their storage vesicles because they no longer have the energy to hold them back. It is a literal dam breaking inside the synapses. But from a perceptual standpoint, this massive chemical release means the dying brain is experiencing a reality that is far more intense, colorful, and real than anything experienced on a Tuesday afternoon. The colors are brighter, the sounds are louder, and the emotions are deeper. Then look at the physical movement of this energy. Neurologists like Dr. Jens Dreyer have documented a phenomenon known as spreading depolarization, or what some call the brain tsunami. After the initial hyperactive surge, a massive wave of electrochemical silence begins to roll across the cerebral cortex. It moves slowly at a rate of a few millimeters per second, extinguishing the brain cells as it passes. It is a literal wave of twilight swallowing the landscape of the mind. Yet, as this wave moves, the subjective experience of time appears to distort completely. This is the third angle to consider: time dilation. When your brain is firing at 10 times its normal speed and processing a massive flood of internal data, a single second can feel like an hour. A minute can feel like an eternity. The internal clock of the human mind unravels completely from the clock on the wall. You are trapped in a pocket of time that feels infinite, even as the outside world watches the second hand tick forward just once. If these insights are making you see the human mind in a completely different light, please take a second to like this video and share it with someone who loves exploring the hidden corners of science. It helps spread these ideas to more curious minds. But here's the part nobody talks about. Almost no one quotes the data on what happens when the timeline pushes past the 3-minute mark, where clinical death begins to harden into cellular death. This is the boundary line where the mind enters a territory that seems to defy our conventional definitions of life and awareness. In 2014, an international team led by Dr. Sam Parnia published the groundbreaking AWARE study in the journal Resuscitation. They spent years tracking over 2,000 cardiac arrest patients across 15 different hospitals in the United Kingdom, the United States, and Austria. These were individuals whose hearts had completely stopped, whose brains had flatlined on monitors, and who were clinically dead by every standard medical definition. What they found was staggering. Out of the survivors who could be interviewed, 39% described a distinct perception of awareness during the period when their hearts were not beating. But there was one specific case that was hardest to explain away. A 57-year-old social worker remembered the exact auditory and visual details of his resuscitation. He accurately described the sounds of the medical machines, the specific movements of the doctors, and the physical appearance of the nurses who worked on him. He reported looking down at his own body from the corner of the ceiling. When Dr. Parnia's team cross-referenced the patient's timeline with the medical records, they verified that his conscious awareness continued for up to 3 full minutes after his heart had completely stopped. This is supposed to be biologically impossible. According to every textbook, within 20 seconds of cardiac arrest, the electrical activity of the cerebral cortex drops to 0. Yet, this man was recording memories. Let's evaluate this across 3 distinct lines of reasoning. First, look at the clinical definition of death itself. We treat death like a single moment, a timestamp on a certificate, but the AWARE study suggests that death is a prolonged process where different systems shut down at different speeds. The heart stops, the monitors flatline, but the underlying cellular structure of the brain can remain viable and capable of processing high-level information far longer than we ever anticipated. Second, look at the cross-cultural universality of these experiences. Dr. Charlotte Martial and her team at the University of Liège have spent years analyzing the narratives of near-death experiences across different cultures, religions, and eras. Whether the patient is an atheist in New York, a Buddhist in Tokyo, or a medieval peasant from centuries ago, the core structure of the narrative remains remarkably consistent. They report a sense of peace, a separation from the physical body, a movement through a dark transition space, and an encounter with a profound light. This uniformity suggests we are not looking at random hallucinations, but a hardwired biological script written into the very architecture of the Homo sapiens brain. Third, consider the deep philosophical and evolutionary question. Why do we possess a standardized exit protocol? If evolution only cares about passing on genetic material to the next generation, a complex neurological mechanism for dying peacefully seems utterly useless. A dead organism cannot reproduce. A dying organism cannot protect its offspring. Some scientists suggest that this is the final, ultimate manifestation of the brain's internal defense systems, a neurochemical shield designed to protect the mind from the absolute trauma of its own dissolution. In 2001, Dr. Pim van Lommel published a landmark study in the Lancet tracking hundreds of cardiac arrest survivors. He argued that our current materialistic view of the brain as a machine that generates consciousness might be incomplete. He suggested that the brain might act more like a television receiver, translating an underlying consciousness into physical reality. When the receiver breaks down during those final minutes, the signal does not vanish, it simply changes form. We are standing on the edge of the ultimate evolutionary mystery. If you want to join us for more deep dives into evolutionary science, counterintuitive human history, and the strange biology that makes us who we are, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. What if the final 3 minutes inside a dying brain are not a terrifying malfunction at all? What if they are a feature, not a bug? What if, for 300,000 years, our species has carried a hidden evolutionary gift designed to ensure that our final conscious experience is one of profound timeless realization? Think about this. Every fear you have ever felt, every anxiety that has kept you awake at night, is driven by an evolutionary program designed to keep you away from the edge. Your brain fights desperately to avoid the dark. But when the battle is finally lost and the physical machinery can no longer sustain the loop, the program shifts. The filters drop. The internal pharmacy opens its doors. The mind fires its final magnificent symphony, creating a pocket of eternity out of a few passing seconds. Tonight, when you look at a monitor or switch off your bedroom lamp, you won't see a sudden, empty darkness. You'll see a hidden spark, waiting to turn the final silence into a brilliant, blinding storm.